Hello and welcome back to me, Laura Jane, and George Castro doing our thing with our parenting podcast that we're calling something like Conscious Connected Parenting. We realize we both like those words. And so, yes, we're super glad you're here. Welcome back. George, do you want to say hi?
Yes. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone.
It may be morning or afternoon by the time people listen to this, right? So nice of you to honor. And evening for the evening listeners. We're back. And again, so honored to share from our hearts and practices and professions even, right? To feed the parents of the world. And one thing that we were talking about today, which I think we're going to be getting right into, that we realize is kind of the basis of this parenting show, is this idea that we all have good intentions with our kids, no matter what. And George, I love that you always really share that attitude in your work when you describe your work with families, even though I know after so many years, you've seen a lot of things, and it may be challenging to stay heartful like that and keep reminding yourself that all these parents have such good intentions, even as you see it go in all sorts of directions. So George and I were talking about today, getting into some of the pieces of how these good intentions can go, and maybe some of what we're seeing with how our good intentions might end up limiting our kids and really shaping them in ways we didn't mean to and affecting them into their adulthood and their relationships with themselves in ways that we're not necessarily wanting to probably. So taking a look at that and, just what we can do as conscious, connected parents wanting to do even better job of translating our good intentions into something that actually works for our kids and what we think we want for our kids. George, what do you want to say about, just to start, about this idea of good intentions? What comes up for you with that?
I mean, I just believe that all the parents that I see have the best intentions for their kids. I rarely see anybody who has any negative intent. They're always, when I see kids, usually when I get to see them at the office or something like that, the parents have obviously brought them in because there's a concern or there's something that, is bothering them or something like that. And I always feel like this double agent because, I listen to the parents' concerns, and I'm a parent, so I empathize and I feel for them, and I understand a lot of what they're telling me, and then I go into like this, covert operation with the kids of uncovering what's going on, and I'm always amazed, the things that the kids tell me, and for some reason they trust me because I don't know, maybe I'm still a young age, I don't know, but they do, I always tell them it's confidential and stuff like that, and so they really feel like I understand them, and so they will tell me things, and I'm just always blown away by the things they tell me, and I'm like, well, of course, then, this is going on. But, I do believe that the parents always come in with good intentions, they always, it always is coming from love, it's always coming from concern, and I think that, it's a complete thought.
And some of what you're already bringing up, I think, which you and I were just starting to hone in on, is this how we can be listening to our kids and how often we're not really listening, especially when they do want to express to us. So, will you say more about what you're noticing with that whole listening piece?
Well, I mean, often kids will tell me things, and, it's interesting because even as a parent, I just shared this with you before we started, and it's a thought I had never really expressed that way before, which is it really is like that two-way mirror, like we were talking. It's sort of like, we kind of see ourselves or we see our own experiences. We don't really, so we're not really listening. We're kind of looking at a mirror image sometimes. But on the other side, the kids really they're expressing something. They can see us clearly. And we're not necessarily seeing them clearly, so we really need to listen. And like we were talking about before, we need to feel. I mean, it's almost like we need to close our eyes, just feel and listen to what they're expressing, because we probably have a very different idea about who they are or what their problems are. And I think, we do a lot of limiting behaviors with them by not listening to what they're actually saying, what they're actually needing. And we're giving them what, we think they need. And sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes we have to be just parents and, just parent 101. You're going to drink water because it's hot and you need to stay hydrated, But other times it's okay to let them, do the sorts of things that they want to do, even though it may not be what we would have for them, So giving them that room to grow, like we were talking about before.
Wow, yeah. So the listening, including room for their, even showing us parts of themselves that are emerging or that they're trying out, and our listening, including listening to things that may be hard for us to hear or that we may think we disagree with. And I think you're really bringing something up that's important here, that's like when we're looking at our kids, how much we may not be seeing them clearly and what that's like for them if they don't really feel like they're being heard or seen. And, just the dynamics that can start to come up with that, even into our kids' adulthoods, right? And that is starting to come up for me, like how much I'm so interested in how all this parenting ends up affecting us as individuals when after we've been parented and we're out in the world, and how many of us adults nowadays are using the majority of our adulthood to try to undo what we've done to us in parenting, even, again, all of us with parents with good intentions, right? And even a lot of us with really progressive parents. I was really fortunate to have pretty progressive parents that did things better and more smooth, I think, than a lot of parents. And I still wound up feeling like I needed to, take several years to really find out who I am and even share that with my parents, because I know I started to feel like I wasn't, at least I don't think I felt brave enough to even share who I was becoming and to be vulnerable like that. And not because there was necessarily a punishment thing going on, but maybe just because of a judgment thing, though, that we all learn, right? And just, interesting how that can come through into how our kids feel about themselves and how they make decisions when they go out into the world, as kids or as adults. Yeah, what were you going to say?
And I was just going to say, I was thinking of something my dad said, and it's kind of weird that I should have that thought now, but because I've had conversations with him about different things over the years, and one of the things he's like, well, he said it kind of bluntly, and sort of like, well, we're all going to mess up our kids. How are you going to mess them up? In the sense that I think what he was trying to get at is we're all going to make mistakes. I'll rephrase it. We're all going to make mistakes. It's just, which mistakes are we going to make? I mean, it's inevitable that we're going to, by just taking any action, we're going to not take another action. So it's just what particular instances are we going to, make mistakes in? And we have to, because that's part of learning, right? So.
Yes, and that's where I think the best that we could do is get back to this conscious, connected approach, meaning, again, that we're just paying attention to what we are doing and the awareness and present. And the connected part to me so clear. It's about a parent being more connected to themselves in addition to their kids, so that they can just keep checking in with themselves to see how it's going, see how it's feeling, see how things are working. So yeah, that's where the connection part, I think, seems so important. And then, of course, finding ways to be more connected with our kids, creating more time and space to listen to them seems highly important now that you bring that up, like as one of the examples of connecting. I mean, I noticed, like, for me with my kids as teenagers, I'm really, like, eager for when I notice they're ready to share. Or I'd like to think I am, although it still often takes a clearing of my attention and even putting aside what I thought I was doing next to be ready when they do want to share. But, like, I noticed time in the car has become a time where we might wind up having more conversations. So for me to enjoy that and to say yes to the opportunities to give them rides, because that winds up a time for connection and a time to get a chance to listen to them more. So what do you think about ways that we could create more ways to listen to our kids, and even, like what you're saying about the feeling and such, too?
Yeah, I just had a thought. The car is a perfect place, and I know for us, too, because there's something about driving and being in the car that's kind of confidential and private, you know. And it's, you know, scenic, and it's almost like, you know, if your kid's in the back seat, it's almost like, you know, there's not this eye-to-eye sort of confrontation. It's just sort of speaking out the window, these truths, you know. But one of the things that I just thought of is that it doesn't have to be this big, okay, we're going to sit down and have a meeting and we're going to talk. One of the things I've learned, and many therapists will tell you this over the years, is that you can have a whole 50-minute session with somebody, and the therapeutic part doesn't come until they're, like, going out the door. It's like, oh, and by the way, did I tell you that my dog passed? Or, you know, did I tell? Wow, no, you didn't tell me that. So, you know, just be aware and being conscious of the fact that it may just be a 2-second blip, you know, but if you're conscious, you're going to catch it. You know, if you're not conscious, you're going to be like, okay, see you next week, you know. And so the idea that it has to be this big sit down, it may just be like you said. It may be a walk. It may be 2 minutes, you know, in an intermission or something. It may not be this huge talk, but it's valuable to them. And being, like you said, aware when they're actually sharing it is huge. Because, and even still, and maybe that's the time just to listen, not to say anything further because it's deep already. And if they wanted to spend 50 minutes talking to you about it, they would have spent it when they were, you know, in session or with you in the car. The reason they told you in that short, brief time is because it was just one little thing they wanted you to know, but you don't have to make it into a big thing. And I need to practice that because being a therapist, I want to go there so bad. But sometimes it's just, okay, wow, that's valuable information. I'm just going to put that away, you know.
And that's where it helps me, too, to see it as it's like a day-to-day thing and a moment-to-moment thing as far as just being open and ready to be listening. And the value of talking less and listening more, right? Because how many of us parents, when we think we want to sit and have a conversation with our kids, we're usually more in the parent speaking, child listening mode, right? Like that's the usual framework. So it's pretty different. Or, you know, to hear our kids and then to want to, like you started to mention, fill their ear with our response or something, right? Which may or may not be what they need. And so I think that seems progressive and conscious and connected to just make it more about listening. And then I feel like part of what we're seeing involves this, if we could bring in some non-judgment. It's almost like how I like to teach people about listening to themselves in meditation. It's like the more that we could be in non-judgment, you know, without trying to jump to good or bad, right or wrong. maybe the more likely the connection is
Right.
going to stay open and the communication, right? So this non-judgment, which is really different than parenting, because parenting feels like the one, or than traditional
Absolutely.
parenting, right? Because usually it's like it's all about teaching them what's good and bad and right and wrong, right? So if you're not going to always be all about teaching them whether that was good or bad or right or wrong, and not even mention that, it's pretty different, but empowering. Yeah, what do you think about non-judgment idea?
I think you kind of nailed it, because I think one of the reasons that I can appreciate the kids that I work with so much, and I love my kids. I rarely have met a child or young person that I was working with because I can see their beauty, I can see their greatness, I can see their gifts, I can see, their challenges, but I don't have all this parenting baggage of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have all these images of them not getting up or not doing what they're supposed to do according to whatever I want them to do. And, I don't have all that. So when they come to see me, I can just focus on who they are. And I think that's the beauty of it, because I was thinking, why do I see this? Well, I think you just nailed it, because I don't have all these preconceived judgments of who they are. I just see who they're presenting and who they're sharing. And so
it's that
I think
ironic,
that's
too,
it.
that you could feel, because it's almost like, why can't we feel that way with our kids? Because it's so charged with our kids. Like, it's such this intense thing. And it's so tragic, actually, as you said that, like, that you can see their beauty. It's like, oh, my gosh, how sad if our parenting is making it hard for us to see the beauty in our kids, much less for them to see it. But, you almost think, well, why is it so highly charged as a parent? Oh, because you think it's your job to help them or your job to guide them. But you, when you're sitting there in that office with a child, it literally is your job, right? You're getting paid to help them. And yet, the way to help them most is the non-judgment, right? Like, that's part of how you're helping them, is you're saying, I am going to guide you and counsel you from this place of non-judgment, and that's why it can be so impactful for a person, right? Well,
yeah, and I just want to say, it's interesting because I never really think about the fact that it's a charged thing, and in fact, the places that I'm working right now, I'm not getting very much at all, trust me. And the insurances do not pay very much at all, trust
very
me.
sweetly affordable, yes.
No, I'm just saying, like, I guess it's not coming from that place.
Right.
I'm saying. And I think the reason that I'm able to, I never think of it, I guess I never think of it as a job. That's the first thing. It doesn't feel like a job to me. I've always worked with people. I've always worked with kids. And I've always worked with young people. Even as a teenager, I would have people that would call me. I didn't realize that they were in crisis, but I would, talk them out of their tree, so to speak. And so it's never been something, in fact, I never thought I was going to, way back when, become a therapist. I thought I was going to be a lawyer or a doctor or something like that. So it's just something that happens, and it happens to me. It doesn't matter whether I'm in the office or not. That's irrelevant, actually. So I just want to make that clear. But I do feel that there's something about the office, or it's like I see it as a sacred space, and it's a safe space, and I try to create that, and that's what really is the key, is that if you feel like someone can keep your most deepest thoughts and feelings safe, and they can express that, that's very therapeutic, regardless of who it is.
Right, and wouldn't that be so beautiful if our families and our homes could become, could be that, right? Could become, or as parents, if we could just keep that in mind, like, ooh, what can I do to help our family life, our home, feel like a sacred space where someone feels like they're listened to and they're not judged, and like, that's amazing. Oh my gosh.
Well, I've seen, some actually Brené Brown has like rules for parents, like she has these rules. Actually, I have it here somewhere. But
I'm going to write that down, because I've been wanting to check her out more, and maybe I can link people to it.
In her Daring Greatly book, which I gave my copy away, which was a gift from my family a few years back. And then, but as the universe usually does, it provides and gave me a used copy again from the used bookstore. So I will probably give this one away too at some point. She actually has like these rules, and they're not rules. They're like, what do you call it? Like maybe a manifesto or something. She has a chapter called Wholehearted Parenting at the very end, and I'm looking for the. But let's see. You can talk, and I'll look for it. And let's see if I find
Wholehearted Parenting.
She talks about feedback, and you know, like how to, you know, she's really.
Well, and interesting, I know she's really popular now for talking about how important it is to be vulnerable. And I know she's really striking a chord with a lot of adults around me. So, yeah, that's exciting that she's sharing how to bring that into parenting. Yeah, so I'll definitely look forward to checking that out.
And I bring that into, I think, into the office, into the therapy, because I think, you know, we're taught, you know, if people are cold or cold fish sort of, like you're not going to get anywhere with kids or young people if they don't feel like you're in. Do you know what I'm saying? And so there's a lot about transparency and disclosure in the therapy world. And generally it's frowned upon unless it can be something that is going to help the client, because then the thought is you're doing it for yourself and it's unfinished business. But I actually have found that, you know, there's some kids that I work with that are, you know, 17-year-old or something like that, and they're going through something really intense, and they're not going to just tell a stranger. It's like, well, who the heck are you? Why should I share anything with you? So sometimes by me sharing something that shows them that I'm human and that I've been through my own, you know, that I've traveled this path. It's not just I'm deciding I'm going to help you without ever having been anywhere. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's helpful for a parent, too. I think it's pretty cool to think of parents taking tips from a therapist on how to work with our kids, you know, and to think about bringing that dynamic home more, because I think a lot of parents would love to be able to be more of like a therapeutic agent for our kids, if in a way that's not obtrusive, right? So I think that's helpful for parents to remember that maybe the more human you let yourself be, and even sharing your stories, right, and even your current challenges is a way that you could open up the listening, you know, and open up the connection.
Okay.
Ooh.
So it's actually called the Wholehearted Parenting Manifesto, and I love the way that I have not thought about this again until we're talking, and then you say something, and then I say something, and then it triggers something else that is totally relevant. So I'll read it. It's one page. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. So it says, well, I mean, and this is something that, you know, you could hang in your home. It says, above all else, I want you to know that you are loved and lovable. You will learn this from my words and actions. The lessons on love are in how I treat you and how I treat myself. I want you to engage with the world from a place of worthiness. You will learn that you are worthy of love, belonging, and joy every time you see me practice self-compassion and embrace my own imperfections.
Oh, my gosh.
We will practice courage in our family by showing up, letting ourselves be seen, and honoring vulnerability. We will share our stories of struggle and strength. There will always be room in our home for both. We will teach you compassion by practicing compassion with ourselves first and then with each other. We will set and respect boundaries. We will honor hard work, hope, and perseverance. Rest and play will be family values as well as family practices. You will learn accountability. I always get choked up. You will learn accountability and respect by watching me make mistakes and make amends and by watching how I ask for what I need and talk about how I feel. I want you to know joy, so together we will practice gratitude. I want you to feel joy, so together we will learn how to be vulnerable. When uncertainty and scarcity visit, you will be able to draw from the spirit that is part of our everyday life. Together we will cry and face fear and grief. I will want to take away your pain, but instead I will sit with you and teach you how to feel it.
Oh, my gosh.
We will laugh and sing and dance and create. We will always have permission to be ourselves and with each other. No matter what, you will always belong here. As you begin your wholehearted journey, the greatest gift that I can give to you is to live and love with my whole heart and to dare greatly. I will not teach or love or show you anything perfectly, but I will let you see me, and I will always hold sacred the gift of seeing you, truly, deeply seeing you. And that's from Brene Brown's Daring Greatly. It's in the very back of the book almost. So, yeah.
Okay, yes, that's so good. I want to make copies, and we'll have to make copies and bring it to our live workshop.
You can go to her website, and I think she has it there for download.
I bet, yeah. So that'll be fun to print up to share. And so, and then I love, actually, and it sounds like it's the title of that book, and this is kind of like maybe one of the last pieces we could talk about for this call is, she says, dare greatly.
Greatly, yes.
This idea that I mentioned before we got on the call of how we are with our kids about risk-taking. And so I love that she says that towards the end, and we will dare greatly, right? And so, because I was telling you, I was noticing recently, because I learned along the way from one of my parenting mentors, Tracy Roberts, that risk is a part of learning. And so when my kids were 3 and 4, I was getting a good reminder to know that they're taking risks as part of how they learn. So whether that meant getting on the bigger swing or even working with bigger scissors or things that, may feel a little bit risky, that I could know that's part of their learning. And so to even support that and encourage that. And then yet I got so reminded lately in being around families with kids of all ages how we often get so mad at our kids for taking risks. And like I was sharing with you, I'm also so fascinated with how many of us now as adults have a hard time taking risks even in our creative lives or in our relationships or in our households, because maybe we've learned that not only is it scary to take a risk, but we might also even get like other people's discouragement or even almost punished by other people with their fears and worries that were brought up and how they were triggered perhaps by our risk-taking. So I just really got this look at like, wow, how are we being with our kids about their very natural risk-taking behaviors, and are we instilling an even greater fear about taking risks and creating more adults who are not going to have the nerve to really, do what we want to do in life? Because like you and I were just talking about with making our books and things, that the fear is such an element and these, ways that we can stop ourselves and not do the things we want to do in our lives. And so, how much are we conditioning our kids to be afraid by how we respond to their risk-taking and or just trying to guide them, right, and make sure that they're safe or making smart choices or doing what we would do. And I think part of what comes up for me, too, is how much are we taking them from their inner guidance, too, when we really expect them to operate almost always thinking, what would mom think of this versus, like, what do I think of this, right? And that becoming the measure. so clearly taking it outside of ourselves to look for our guidance. And then again, so many of us adults are still in that place of looking outside of ourselves for our guidance. So, yeah, I'm just fascinated with this dynamic of risk-taking and how parents respond when they realize their 3-year-old or their 13-year-old has taken a risk that maybe was completely developmentally appropriate and in a playful manner. And yes, maybe they could have died, right, because that's part of risk. But even then, like, how do we even respond to that in a way that shows we care with those good intentions without shutting them down and teaching them more fear about risk-taking? I mean, what do you think, George?
No, I agree. I think that it's hard for parents too, whether it be watching your kid ride a bike for the first time or skateboard or climb some tree or something of that nature. It's tough because I think we've nurtured this child from infancy, and we have their best intentions and we don't want them to get hurt. But yeah, it's a balancing act, of letting them do what they may want to do without, even when we know they're going to go against something that we want for them. It's tough to restrain ourselves and kind of just wait and see, to see if they succeed, or maybe they do fall and we help pick them up, and maybe they keep going. Maybe it's it's part of their journey. I think it's tough as parents to watch our kids. Something else, my dad, for all the things that he has said to me that have been hurtful, there have been things that he has said that have been helpful. And one of the things is, we can't protect our children forever. We can't, we try, but we can't. It's impossible. And we have to trust them. That's the other thing. I love that sticker, of trust the children, because we have, we put all this, we put our best effort into them, our energy, our time, our resources, our, things that we've learned and wisdom. And then at some point around teenage years, we have to kind of let them find their way. We have to kind of sit back because, their friends are now their peer group, and we have to kind of just say, okay, I hope I did a good job. Hope I did, a good enough parent. I was a good enough parent. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to be good enough.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember for a while I thought my gauge could be in how I feel. Like if my kids wanted to do something, and if I didn't feel comfortable with it, it seemed like, okay, I can make my judgment from there. I think that seems fair, that I can go with what feels right to me at the time. And then I was talking to Pam Sarushian about that, one of our friends and mentors, right? And she brought up, oh, no. There are going to be some things they want to do that you'll never be comfortable with, like driving, right? And so then I realized, oh, man, I can't go with that one anymore. So it's just interesting. And I think not that we can't guide our kids, talk to our kids, right? But I think we just really want to watch our tone and the emotional burden we might lay on our kids when we get triggered by a risk-taking thing they do, and to really watch how we respond, and that we're not wanting to teach them it was wrong or bad to take a risk, and that even if it was a different decision than we would have made, again, we could still express that to them, but probably in a way that doesn't shame them or shut them down to future risk-taking, and that empowers them to be able to trust themselves. I really think if we want to teach our kids to be connected to themselves and to be able to trust themselves, at some point that means letting them trust themselves even more than they trust us sometimes, right? Or looking to their own guidance before they're always looking to us for what is safe or feels right. But it's a leap and a scary leap, I guess, for us parents. And that maybe we're going to actually have more influence in the long run if we can approach it that way, more kindly, more humbly, and just supporting the courage, right? Like, I love that courage was in that Brene Brown manifesto also, and that goes with daring greatly. So, like, how can we encourage our kids to be courageous and daring greatly, right? Like, we all think we want those things. But then what are we doing when they do something that for them was courageous or daring greatly, even though it scared the crap out of us, So I just think that's good for us to look at this stage in humanity, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're not us. That's the thing, too. They're all different. They all have their own. I mean, we so much want to think that, they're our kids and, they're part of us, and they are part of us, but they're their own human being. They're their own little person, and with their own thoughts and their own feelings, and and they're very valid. And so I think it's hard to accept that sometimes. I think we want to, we think we know best, and sometimes we do. But even when we know best, if it doesn't involve, I just want to put a kind of little caveat, like if it's not a safety-related thing, it's all about calculated risk. I think that's the key term, is calculated, Yes, they could fall off the bike or the skateboard or whatever, but, it's a calculated risk, of course. It's not like you're saying, okay, go, do something that with like 90% chance they're going to be hurt. It has to be something that is calculated. And it could be something as simple as, walking to the store by themselves, It could be something as simple as, which is really scary this day and age, but, it's something that teens used to do all the time back in the day, And so, again, it's like calculated risk. Or, they with other people, other teens, or they go with the group. I know our kids tend to go as a big herd, which seems pretty safe, and they walk together places and go places together. And I think, that's part of living, you have, at some point, they're going to be without us. So the more that they can learn while they're with us, the better off it will be.
And I love that you say that. So maybe we can help them learn about calculating, calculating risks. And then, sure, along that way is a process, so they may calculate some better than others. And so, just how can we be involved and connected enough to be there for that, but then, to hopefully not shame them for calculating differently than we would have, right? Because they are still learning about that. I mean, still maybe helping guide them, but without shaming them, right? Because of our mortal fear.
Is an expert on shame. I mean, that's what she talks about. So just for future reference, she talks a lot about shame, and she studied shame, and so it's a really interesting word that you use, because I guess that's coming through for you as well, which is, she has a definition in here, and I'm probably going to misquote it, but, her definition of shame is, different from, it's different than doing something bad. It's actually feeling bad about yourself, like you feel you are bad. And that comes from somebody, like you say, maybe constantly saying something that is not, in a positive light about you, or, you're made to feel really bad over and over about something. So, and she, there's such a thing as, she'll talk about healthy shame and stuff like that. But, this is really, I don't know why it came up for me today with what we were talking about, but it's worth a read. I got it in a used bookstore, and it was like, I don't know, like a couple bucks, probably like $3 or $2. I think when I originally got it, it was like $20 or something.
And I'll put the reference to her and that book in the info under the YouTube video. And I love that. And I like that wholehearted parenting, just reminding us to be parenting from our heart even more. And I like that. So, and maybe daring greatly to do that. Even that is takes some dare, right, to parent.
Absolutely.
like this, but for good reason. So, yeah, so here's to our good intentions and how we can listen and guide and just enjoy a more connected, conscious experience with our kids. So anything you'd want to say as we call it to a close here, George?
No, just, thank you as always, and I'm always amazed. I never know what's going to come up when we're speaking. I never know exactly what we're going to talk about, and I think I find that exciting, and I find, it's kind of like an open channel, so it's kind of cool. I like it.
Yes, and it really feels good to me to be putting energy into these topics because it does feel so important, and it feels good to be doing it right now while you and I are still in such the heart of it, right? I mean, 10 years from now, you and I will be in different places as parents, so it makes sense for us to be doing this kind of thing now, I'm sure. So anyway, so thank you. I always totally enjoy it and love that I never know what's going to come out either. And, thank you to you who are here listening with us. And if you ever have questions or you just want to share some of your thoughts with us, we would love that. And you can find us on Facebook and things like that. We'll put links on the videos. But thank you for being here to listen, and hope you got some things that fill you up as a parent and bring you back to family life even more inspired and more feeling connected with how you want to parent, right? Okay. Well, thanks, George. Good to be here with you.
Thank you, Lord Jane. Okay.
All right. Adios.
Bye.